D. Mace Fingen and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. I hope everybody is having a wonderful start to their May. It hit me. I had to make sure it was indeed May 1st. Feels like April just came and went.
It did. Goodness.
But it is indeed May 1st. And I'm sure some of you will have your Justin Timberlake in sync. It's going to be May memes already, if you haven't sent them out already. Are you familiar with this meme, guys?
I'm not. Fill me in.
Enlighten us.
There's an old in sync song. It's going to be me.
Yes.
But
I know that.
The way that Justin Timberlake in the song says me, he says May.
His Memphian came out.
It's gonna be May.
Not bad.
It's gonna be May.
So a lot of people like to send that out, like the May the 4th be with you, which we will experience in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Thankfully, that is on a Sunday, so we won't be on the air to get all of those memes.
Goodness. Thank goodness.
But nevertheless, I did not run over any poultry on my way to work today.
Dang it. So we ain't got no unique
Nor did I.
story. Have you gotten any more information?
I've got no new information
Portland,
on the turkey.
PT?
No word out of
PT. Portland turkey.
Portland turkey.
PT is back.
I thought we were done with PT.
No, just when you thought you were done.
The Portland
he's back.
turkey, as far as we know, still enjoying a healthy life. Still a little bit banged up, I'm sure.
Okay.
No new report out of Portland. If anybody has a report and seen a turkey with a limp today, PT,
yes,
please pass it on.
That turkey is going to need PT, physical therapy.
Yes.
all around.
But
there you go.
We do want to thank Ascent Buildings in Portland for having us yesterday. Incredibly hospitable hosts, really nice people. We're glad that we were able to get out there and help them. So a big thanks to Ascent Buildings in Portland yesterday for having us for the show. And yesterday, we ended our show talking about this Bill Belichick, Jordan Hudson, CBS Sunday Morning interview kerfuffle. And while we were on the air, Bill Belichick released a statement via the University of North Carolina in which he said CBS created a false narrative by selectively editing their interview. CBS responded.
You knew that was coming.
Quote, when we agreed to speak with Mr. Belichick, it was for a wide-ranging interview. There were no preconditions or limitations to this conversation. This was confirmed repeatedly with his publisher before the interview took place and after it was completed. And we talked with Jared Stillman about this at the end of our show. Jared talked about it on his show, how he's worried for the well-being of Bill Belichick. But don't take our word for it. This was Charles Barkley on the Dan Patrick Show discussing what's become of Bill Belichick lately.
What is Bill Belichick doing?
Well, this is a very slippery subject for me because Bill's one of my really good friends. I'm not sure what's going on. He's been a great friend for me for a long time. We've been friends since he coached for the Browns. I think he got to be very careful right now. This is starting to be on a very slippery slope. He's the greatest football coach ever for him and Nick Saban, for college Nick Saban, for Bill to NFL. Yeah, I from what I'm hearing, it's starting to be a very slippery slope. And I never talk about people's personal relationship. That's another rule I got. But I will admit I'm a little concerned with some of the stuff that's going on. And I might actually reach out to him and make sure everything's good. But I am concerned from what I'm hearing because, it's not a good look right now. I'll admit that.
So that was Charles Barkley on the Dan Patrick Show. And we've all been there, right? We've all had that friend who has dated a woman, or if you're a woman, a friend who's dated a man who could best be described as problematic, perhaps. Toxic, maybe, and they're a bad influence on your friend. They change their attitude. Maybe they change the way they look. And you and your buddies are like, intervention, 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 intervention. And this is what I feel like is going to happen to Bill Belichick at some point. Somebody, Jared suggested Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady might actually be enjoying this. But I'm wondering if at some point somebody needs to step in and be like, Bill, what's going on, man? Are you okay?
I mean, listen, if he wants this young lady, his publicist, whoever, his confidant, his whatever, if he wants her to run his life, again, more power to him. This is something that maybe his family should intervene if they see a problem. If you have a close friend and something like this is happening to him, you think you would have the sort of space to, voice your opinion, and kind of let it be that, and the friendship won't be damaged. But we know a lot of times that's not the case, where, the friendship may be damaged at that particular moment, and you may be able to repair it, because sometimes people don't want to hear the truth. Again, y'all know what I'm standing on. Yeah. So as far as what she's controlling,
Charles Barkley had a way of saying ick. He didn't use
exactly.
Ick. Ick was your words, but I think you and Charles are on the same page. I think we're all on the same page with the ick factor. Here's something I want to hear from you, Adam, from the journalistic side, because yesterday we talked about how Bill Belichick comes out and says, hey, we agreed he wasn't supposed to ask about anything except for the book. Now, apparently she is mentioned in the book, Bill Belichick's new book. But it sounds like Bill Belichick is trying to say, get the violins out for me. I didn't know they were going to ask tough questions. And we agreed we weren't going to ask tough questions. But CBS made a strong statement saying, no, we did not agree with the publisher, with Bill Belichick, with anybody, that we were going to be limited in what we could ask. So how does Bill Belichick come off looking after that?
Personally, an interview subject using the excuse that the interview was selectively edited, that's an act of desperation. Bill Belichick understands that this interview could not have gone any worse than it did. So to claim I was taken out of context, again, to me, that is an act of desperation. That's what somebody does when they realize they screwed up in an interview.
But okay, I'm looking at it like this. Now that you're saying that, it's the same thing it's sort of the same thing that's happening with Shedeur. Now, it's crazy that you bring Shedeur in this, but it's the same thing that happened with Shedeur, his dad. And everybody's wondering, like, who's controlling what?
It's the broader subject of how the media plays a role, how social media plays a role, and how you have to play the game if you're those people.
Yeah, but then on Bill Belichick's side, it's this young lady seems to be sort of undermining what he probably wants to achieve. Like, Bill wants to be more personable.
His image is
he wants to be more personable. He wants that because he wants another job. But people see Bill as the sort of micromanager, but then they see this young lady over here controlling him. It's like people are trying to figure that out. Like, what's really going on here?
Well, okay. And then I have this is another observation, because look, if you listen to our show long enough, we've talked about these issues. I am all for, and because this gets talked about a lot. But here's a young woman who is trying to come across, I think, as a legitimate business partner, somebody who is involved in decision making for North Carolina football. She's on the email. She has a title. What is it? The Bill Belichick Productions?
She is the COO of Bill Belichick Productions.
Right. And she happens to be his girlfriend. So let's put that aside for a second. Let's just look at the professional part of this. I wonder how it's going over where you want to be the official title holder. You want to be able to jump into a nationally televised interview and say, sorry, we can't talk about that subject. But also putting out the provocative, let's call it what it is. It's a provocative series of pictures of the two of them on the beach. Call it what you will. Maybe you're fascinated by it. Maybe you're not. I don't know what the purpose of that is, unless it's a mastermind scheme of the two of them saying this is going to help us get better players to North Carolina. I think we could argue. I could argue one side and say there's no such thing as bad publicity. And I could argue on the other side, is that really what is going to help you win? That doesn't seem what Bill Belichick is about.
And
but from Jordan, what's Jordan's
confused.
last name?
Hudson.
Jordan Hudson. If you're trying to be a legitimate person who is advancing in the career, wants to have a career in this, she's very young. Is this the way to do it? How's that going over in all of the circles that you're trying to cover if you're trying to have a career in this? She's so young.
I think what she's trying to do, and listen, I don't blame her for doing it. She's coming into a world that I assume she hadn't been a part of before Bill. Now she's trying to stake her claim, like, I am a business person. And everybody else is looking at you like, no, you're Bill's girlfriend, little girlfriend. And she's trying to be more assertive. And I get it. She's trying to find her space, and she should. She's trying to find her space in the space that she's never been in. All the while, I don't think people are respecting her as his business partner. They see her.
It's tough. There's going to be more skepticism, especially with with the pictures that are out there, which is what Tony DeCoppola asked about. He showed the pictures and said, okay. And he wasn't trying to be, why are you doing this? It was, hey, you got these pictures. This is a side of you we've never seen. What's been the reaction? And he acted confused. He acted like, hey, I'm on these things, but I don't really watch anything. I don't know what's when he's got to know.
It's almost
that's a very legitimate question to ask. And he didn't answer the question. He just acted confused. He gave it kind of the Bill Belichick press conference. I don't really know what goes on.
I'm viewing this from a media perspective because I am fascinated by media, having worked in media and studied media. This was CBS Sunday Morning. This was not 60 Minutes. CBS Sunday Morning is not known for its hard-hitting interviews. I thought Tony DeCoppola did a really good job in this interview, but as I said, this is not 60 Minutes, the hard-hitting journalism. And if you're trying to sell a book, which is what he's trying to do, he's trying to sell a book, you have to be prepared to answer questions about things that people want to know about. I heard Mad Dog Russo say this the other day, I believe on First Take. Do you think anybody actually wants to read 200 plus pages of Bill Belichick's thoughts on leadership? No. People want to hear about the times Bill Belichick screwed up and what he learned from those things and why he didn't play Malcolm Butler at the end of the Super Bowl and why his relationship with Robert Kraft and Tom Brady got frosty. People want to know those things.
Assessment of the good and the bad. I mean, the thoughts on leadership, that should be part of a book. That's the whole point of a book, and not,
but if you're not sharing that within the book, which I don't know if he's sharing it or not, because I hadn't read the book. I don't even know.
I do believe there are aspects of the times he made mistakes as a coach.
But yes, but I think
what he learned from it.
I think it all goes, but the optics of it, and y'all know how I feel about it. It gives me the icks, he and her. But she's trying to stake her claim again. She's trying to sort of find her space and be assertive in a realm that she hasn't been in. And people are looking at Bill like, Bill, this is not the Bill we know. Like, the Bill we know would be, he's controlling everything. And then when a question is asked of you, Bill, it's almost like you don't know what's going on and you're waiting for her to step in. And it just seemed awkward. Bill got to understand, maybe he does and maybe he doesn't. He got to understand what he did as a coach isn't going to work if he's trying to sell a book and try to change his image. It's not going. That old Bill, when you're winning championships with Tom Brady, you can do that. You can't do that when you're trying to rehash your image.
I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. Wayne Dress. He used to work for ESPN. And I remember Wayne because he is a lifelong Chicago Cubs fan. And a long time ago, he wrote this great feature story trying to track down Steve Bartman. You all remember Steve
Mhm.
Bartman, right?
Sure.
He even did a stakeout at a parking garage, hoping that Steve Bartman would be there. He did ultimately come across Steve Bartman, who did not want to be interviewed. But
There's a whole 30 for 30 on this.
yes, there is, and Wayne Dress is a part of this 30 for 30. And he tweeted this yesterday, and I think this is important. He said, "Young journalists, you have the right to ask anything you want in an interview, and your interview subject has the right to deflect, not answer, or get up and leave. This is not PR. The book was mentioned. The book was shown. That's how these deals work all the time." They talked about the book. I believe they showed the cover of the book. But outside of that, those are really the only parameters. So CBS is disputing Belichick's assertion that, hey, we had set guidelines as to what would and would not be asked in this interview. I can almost guarantee you, and CBS disputes this, as I said, that was not the case. This was an act, in my opinion, as a somewhat seasoned journalist. This was an act of a interview subject realizing, holy crap, this is bad. And they are trying to save face. And it's easy to blame the media because the media has been a punching bag for quite some time.
I would say with Wayne's idealistic take on how an interview should go, that is pure journalism. And
Yes.
I get that.
Yes.
I get that. The reality is people are human. And I do think relationships going forward are part of it. If you don't care what the relationship is with the subject, then fine, do it that way.
I'm sure Tony DeCopel
come with some people, come with some curveballs out of
Right.
nowhere, come with some underhanded stuff, come with the Jim Gray questions out of left field, just
Right.
But
cut right. That's fine. But you're not going to have a relationship with that person. I do think it's okay in a reality if you're in the same city of somebody, if you want to have an ongoing relationship, for example, a coach in that city, I think you have to be careful on how you do that. But I think the coach can help you a lot, or the subject can help you a lot by saying, okay, look, I understand how journalism is. I'm a big boy. I can handle the tough questions. But I think there's a little bit of middle ground, a little bit of wiggle room in there, not as hardcore as Wayne puts out there.
I mean, the fact is, whether asking the questions or not was told on the front end. The optics of it is what looked bad. If Bill Belichick would have been as assertive as he was as a coach when that question was asked of him, I'm not discussing that.
Right. Well, but
when
he jumped in there.
No, that's what I'm saying. When she jumped, if Bill would have just boom, we already said we're not talking about that. Done. It's when he didn't even say, he was like, and then she had to answer.
Yeah,
that was
a bad look.
That's
because
the whole bad
he's
look.
he's never needed that before.
Exactly.
How many press conferences has he's shut down?
Exactly.
Where
That's
he just shuts
it's the
down and
optics
says,
of
we're
it.
moving on. We're
That is
moving
not
on to
the
Cleveland.
bill. That is not the
We're
bill.
moving on to New York.
That is not the bill people have seen
Right.
for 40 years.
It's a fascinating story. And I know a lot of people are fascinated by it because of the age difference between Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson, as Derek just said. To me, it's just the dynamic between them, that this young woman seems to be moving up in the world quite quickly. I just find this story fascinating. And it's in places where you wouldn't normally read about sports. New York Magazine, for example, a magazine I like to read, had a whole write-up about this, which was basically like a primer. It's like, okay, who's Bill Belichick and who's this girl and why is she important? Like this is a story that is transcending sports. As Wes in Clarksville says, usually when you ask a couple how they met, it's usually a funny story. The way it was answered sounds super suspect. He also says it sounds like an Anna Nicole situation, which I did say to you, Willie, yesterday. It reminded me of the Anna Nicole Smith where I don't remember how old she was at the time, but she married like an oil tycoon or something who was clearly on his deathbed when they got married. Like
he was close.
That was the most extreme example that we could think of
that
this type
extreme.
of thing. That was extreme.
Yes. So it's not quite that, but
I go back to her. If she really wants to be, and I would think like you want to be a legitimate business person working in the sports industry, working in this, she has to be careful on how this is going over, right? I think this is a big subject in the sports community, in the journalism, in the sports business world. She's got to be careful, and she's got to make very smart choices going forward, or else she's already getting labeled, right? Because it's a very unorthodox setup here. But you use the term, Adam, moving up in the world fast. Okay, so she has opportunities here that she probably wouldn't have had without the relationship with him. So that's on the front end. But where does it go from here? That's the question.
And as I said yesterday, I am curious about how the University of North Carolina views all of this. And Derek said yesterday that if the Tar Heels lose football games, they'll quickly find a way to get out of this. But
we're just getting started.
Yeah, absolutely. Once the football season starts, if the Tar Heels don't win and win soon, things could get bad in Chapel Hill.
I want to quickly, and maybe we can answer this on the other side.
Sure.
How does Bill Belichick think this helps him if indeed he's trying to get back into the NFL? Just think about that, people.
You still think that's his goal, to go back to the NFL?
Oh, hell yeah.
At 73?
He wants that record. He wants it.
Okay.
So think about. Give me
I
an
would
answer.
I would say quickly that I don't think it's going to help at all, but we'll see. 615-737-1025. You can call us. You can text us on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Coming up next, I was catching up on some NFL draft reading yesterday, and I stumbled across something in a story that was not about the Titans, that involved the Titans, that I found to be quite interesting. 615-737-1025. We'll get to that next, but you can tune in to 94.9 The Fan today as the Nashville Sounds have a doubleheader against Gwinnett. Pregame begins at 3:45 and the first pitch is at 4. Coverage is also available on the Game Nashville app and at thegamenashville.com. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan is presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure.
I believe that deal began with swap of firsts, next year's first, this year's second, next year's second. I mean, is that a windfall? I don't know.
It's pretty good. Say it again.
Swap of first, so they would have gone from first to third.
Yep.
Next year's first, this year's second, next year's second.
Yeah, I'll take that. I mean, I'm taking that.
That was Paul Kaharski on Robbie and Rex Road yesterday, sharing what he learned about the reported offer from the New York Giants to the Tennessee Titans for the number 1 overall pick. Again, a pick swap in the first round this year, so the Titans would have moved from 1 to 3. An early second rounder this year, first and second rounders next year.
I would have done it for one of the 2 second rounders. But that's me.
I know.
Okay, I've said it from the start.
Uh-huh.
When you ask, is that a good deal? That is a windfall. That is by definition a windfall. So I understand why they did it. I don't even want to open up the can of worms again, how much they love Cam Ward and everything like that. That is clear. That's their position. But I just want to make sure that we understand the value of that set of picks. That is a windfall, especially when we're talking about the state of the New York Giants right now. Maybe they'll surprise. Every year there's a surprise team, right, that wins a lot more games than we think they're going to win. It was Washington last year.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's more than one of them. But the probability is that is going to be not just a first-round pick and a second-round pick. It's not like you can do in some leagues, lottery protected or top 10 protected. There's nothing on that. That could be a top 5 pick.
So Jordan Reed of ESPN did his 2026 way too early NFL mock draft. He's not the only one who did this exercise. It is a
God
popular
bless these
thing.
people.
Yes.
Because I don't know what they do the rest of the time, like when the
Got a
draft's
lot of
not
time
going on.
his hand.
So
Make
to make the draft order, he took the inverse of Super Bowl odds from ESPN Bet, breaking some ties based on the 2024 standings and tweaking the back end to ensure the appropriate number of teams from each conference are in the playoff slots. So keep that in mind. He has the Titans having the top pick again. He has a projected trade with the Browns. So the Browns move up to the number 1 spot. The Titans move down to number 3. Guess who has the number 2 pick? The New York Giants in this way too early mock draft based on Super Bowl odds.
So it'll be the same thing as this year. Huh?
Well, but imagine having the top 2 picks and what you could do with that.
Theoretically have
what you could do with that.
the top 2 picks. But I was reading a story from Michael Silver on The Athletic. The headline, "What's it like inside an NFL draft room? Jaguars deliver fireworks to start bold new era." So Michael Silver embedded with the Jacksonville Jaguars on draft night with their Doogie Howser-esque general manager, James Gladstone.
Gladstone.
Do people know who Doogie Howser is?
That's a good question.
Hopefully they do.
This I had people texting me, some friends of mine, who was Carmen Sandiego?
Carmen Sandiego.
I thought it was a neighborhood in San Diego. And so some friends of mine were going, what is your problem? How
So
do you not know
Doogie
who
Howser-
Carmen Sandiego is? Come on.
Doogie Howser was a sitcom in the late 80s to mid 90s, starring Neil Patrick Harris. We all know Neil Patrick
Right.
Harris. Neil Patrick Harris was Doogie Howser,
Right.
MD.
A teenage brainchild who is a doctor at
Just a
whatever age he
genius.
was. Yeah,
Right.
genius, right?
So James Gladstone, who is the new GM of the Jaguars, I believe he's younger than me. I think he's 34. So Doogie Howser fits in this description. But buried deep in this story, because remember, the Jaguars made a trade with the Cleveland Browns to move up to number 2 to take Travis Hunter. And this is something that Michael Silver wrote. Again, this was buried in the story. If you weren't looking for it, you wouldn't have found it. Quote, before the trade with the Browns could become official, meaning the trade between the Browns and the Jaguars, before the trade with the Browns could become official, Cleveland would have to be on the clock with the number 2 pick. And Cam Ward, as expected, would have to be off the board. Had the Titans somehow pivoted and taken another player or traded the pick to a team that did, the Browns would have called off the deal and taken Ward at 2. That, according to Michael Silver, that if Cam Ward would not have gone number 1 to the Titans, they would have called off the deal. The Browns would have called off the deal with the Jags and taken Cam Ward at number 2.
I believe that. I believe they had an opportunity to take Cam Ward if the Titans were to move off that number 1 spot, or if the Titans chose to take Travis Hunter. I think the Cleveland Browns then would have. I don't think it would have been a pivot. I think he was probably their guy. Like, okay, if he fought, this is the guy we want because we need a quarterback. They were picking more so for need, but then he was gone. So then, okay, now we can make a deal with the next person because now the quarterback that we wanted is off the board. So I understand it.
But does it change your perspective at all on the Titans holding on to the number 1 pick and taking Cam Ward? Because based on this report, had they moved down to 3, for example, Cam Ward would not have.
Well,
I mentioned
I wanted him.
Right. I mentioned I mentioned the poker game of maybe you could have played your cards a certain way and still come up with Cam Ward. It appears now that was not going to happen. And so the Titans can at least look everybody straight and say, look, Cam Ward was going to be the first pick.
Yeah.
We weren't the only team that really wanted him. They wanted him as the first pick. So I get that. So that's part of my argument is off the table. I still would have been willing to not come away with Cam Ward to take the maximum amount of the picks. And this is something, again, this is scary because this is part of Jared's argument that I agree with, because he and I agreed that they should have taken the picks. He mentioned sort of the inexperience at the top, right? Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi are relatively inexperienced, although they do have some former GMs that are on the staff. And when they continue to put out, hey, we have a consensus. Everybody agreed that this was the way to go. We are that sold on Cam Ward. We are convicted. All of that. I come back and I say, should it have been that clear cut when that offer is on the table? And that's just, according to what the Titans said, 3 weeks before the draft, they stopped fielding calls. They told everybody 3 weeks before. Like, how do you know that as you got closer to the draft, maybe they would have thrown in another draft pick. Maybe they could have shopped around and said, hey, here's what the Giants offered us. Can you top that? We're just shopping around. What do you think? I think there should have been a big internal debate on the value of that, what I call a windfall, as opposed to taking the quarterback. And it's not a simple one, right? Because they really do feel that Cam Ward is a guy that fits the profile. But why not have I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, look, that was a tough call. That was a tough call because we got some significant offers. When you have the first pick, you have a lot of options. We have a lot of holes. But they've chosen to say, nope, it was an easy decision. We all agree Cam Ward's the guy.
Listen, there's not and I'm going to say this, because we're not operating from 2000, 2010, 1999 to 1980. We're not operating from that standpoint anymore, where the quarterback is sort of secondary. You get your really good run game, get you a solid, knock them down defense, and we can win the championship. It doesn't fly. I just want y'all to look at some names here. I don't think Chicago would have done anything to move out of that number 1 spot. Caleb Williams. They needed a quarterback. He fit the bill. They believe he is their franchise quarterback. The Carolina Panthers, they were not going to do anything to move out of that spot because in their mind, Bryce Young was their guy. It doesn't matter. Now you go down to 21. The Jaguars were taking Trevor Lawrence. No questions asked. We're taking Trevor Lawrence because in their mind, and a lot of other people's mind, he was that guy. Joe Burrow, they wasn't moving off of that pick for nothing because they felt, just like a lot of other people, that was their guy. Kyler Murray, was Arizona going to move off that pick? Probably not, because they knew that was their guy. The Cleveland Browns, they knew that Baker Mayfield was their guy.
Right. You're making my argument for me.
No. What I'm trying to say is this. In today's football, if a franchise feels they're picking number 1 or maybe even number 2, if a franchise feel that guy is going to be the guy that changed my franchise, he's going to be my quarterback. They are drafting him.
But
No if
everybody but the
about it.
Bengals has been wrong in the group that you're just putting out there.
Well,
you can't know.
Cleveland wasn't wrong. They made the wrong choice by letting him go. Baker Mayfield was a good quarterback. He would end up being a better quarterback. But we all know the Browns, their franchise, their organization. It doesn't seem to be, one of the best ran organizations in sports. You look at Jacksonville. They've been to a playoff with Trevor Lawrence. He's getting better. Right. Now, their problem is they've been changing coaches. It's not that these teams have gotten it wrong. It's that they've changed. There's been a lot of other circumstances involved.
But let's go back. But let's go back to a key part of this.
Even Bryce Young,
when you look at the consensus of the evaluation, I think Joe Burrow had the status of first overall pick. I think for sure Trevor Lawrence did.
Caleb Williams did.
Caleb Williams, I think, fits that category as well. But Bryce Young, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, I think there was no quite a bit of debate.
Baker Mayfield.
I don't remember that being the case. I think there was definitely some for the first overall pick. I think it was a bit of a surprise that he went first, and I would put Cam Ward in this category of good first round grade, not the type of first round pick evaluation that would have you say he's the hands down number one pick in the draft.
But it's not. Again, it's not about.
But look at so the batting average of those teams that made the decision that you said, if you feel strongly, they're 1 for 4.
But it's again, you're missing the point. It's not about what you're going to give me. It's about what I think about this individual player.
That's what's wrong with the thinking.
No, it's not, because your whole thinking can happen on the other side too, where you thought. But you getting all these.
But picks. You can make up for it because you have the extra picks. You have a better.
You cannot
pathways of getting good players.
You cannot make up for a guy that has been productive and that has been a franchise quarterback or an elite quarterback. Look at these quarterbacks that I named. They haven't won Super Bowls. I'm just talking about the first pick. But at least I do believe some of them have had success already, and some are just fighting through whatever their organization is putting them through, whether it be Trevor Lawrence, whether it be Bryce Young, whether it be Baker Mayfield when he was in Cleveland. But these guys have all shown that they are starting quarterbacks outside. But they wasn't the top pick outside of Kenny Pickett, because he was the only first-round quarterback that was drafted that year. But outside of Kenny Pickett, I think each one of these quarterbacks have shown that, hey, some are better than others, but it wasn't a waste. Y'all just sort of, the way y'all have approached it with these quarterbacks have been completely wrong. Carolina, Cleveland, Jacksonville. That's just to name a few.
615-737-1025. So you heard the report from Paul Kaharski. The Giants offered the Titans a first-round pick this year, a second-round pick this year, and first and second-round picks next year for the opportunity to move up to number 1 overall. The Titans, of course, declined that offer. Michael Silver of The Athletic said that had Cam Ward been on the board at number 2, the Browns would have called off their deal with the Jaguars and taken Cam Ward at number 2 instead of making the trade for Travis Hunter. Your thoughts on all of that? 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D. Mace Vingan and Donick 1025, 1063. The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. An interesting report from Michael Silver of The Athletic, buried in a story he wrote about the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was embedded with the Jaguars on draft night. He wrote this, quote, before the trade with the Browns could become official, because remember, Jacksonville and Cleveland made a big trade, which allowed Jacksonville to move up to number 2 to take Travis Hunter. Before the trade with the Browns could become official, Cleveland would have to be on the clock with the number 2 pick, and Cam Ward, as expected, would have to be off the board. Had the Titans somehow pivoted and taken another player or traded the pick to a team that did, the Browns would have called off the deal and taken Ward at 2. One texter says, the more I hear how sold everyone in the building was on Cam, the more I'm worried that they convinced themselves he's the guy because they need him to be the guy. I just find it hard to believe that everyone was so on board with Cam when it's never been cut and dry on whether Cam was worthy of the 1-1 pick from everyone outside of the Titans.
It doesn't matter what everybody else outside the Titans think. It doesn't. And I know there were reputable people that have been doing this a long time, people that have not been, that said Cam Ward is a really good quarterback, a really good prospect, but they don't believe at the number 1 spot that they would take him. But that doesn't mean that the Tennessee Titans nor the Cleveland Browns, oh, and by the way, the New York Giants, those 3 franchises thought he was worthy enough that they would have potentially either drafted him at 2 or was trying to position to get him at 1. It doesn't matter what everyone else thinks. I'm telling you, like I tell my kid when he was in grade school, I don't care what everybody else is doing in the class. You know how your mom and I raised you. You know what you need to be doing, what you don't need to be doing. It's the Tennessee Titans. I don't care what everybody else is doing. If we all evaluated him in this room and we felt he was worthy of the number 1 pick, then you draft. That's what drafting is about, especially that high.
Brian on our text line says, just a thought, if they would have taken the trade, say Cam is the dude and does great things. Yes, the Giants may have a top pick, but there is also a chance they would be picking mid to late as well. Yes, the picks would be nice, but there isn't a guarantee the pick will be high first round. What would we be saying? Easy for me to say. If it works with Cam, but we passed on him for picks.
We can't guarantee anything. Guarantee can never be in the conversation as much as you've done your homework and believe in your evaluation. That's why I play the percentages. That's why the studies show year in and year out, over the long haul, you get way more bang for your buck when you have the first pick, or you, in general, in principle, trade down. Your odds of doing better increase. And let's not overlook the fact that Cam Ward is going to have a rookie year where he doesn't have a ton of support from the roster right now, which is okay. But he's gonna have to struggle, and we have seen some rookie quarterbacks really never recover from habits they build when they are in the fire right there, and their confidence is tested, their ability to make plays tested. Let's hope that they can surround him with enough support that he survives this first year, because it's very likely they'll be picking very high again next year. But that's another reason why they could have waited, taken the haul that they could have gotten for that pick, find other holes to fill, and then be even better positioned to take the next quarterback. There will be another quarterback that everybody's sold on in the coming years. They're moving into a new stadium in a couple years, which we're going to talk about in the next hour and how that's going right now. They are asking astronomical prices for the PSLs. Astronomical. You need to have a good team when you move into that stadium. It would help a lot.
Okay.
So if you have the quarterback and nothing else, okay, that's one huge piece. That's the hardest piece to find. But I think that there's not a hurry to do it right away. You can get the quarterback. This is not a one-year project, is I guess what I'm getting at.
Okay.
What's the best way to build?
And
I will take the first-round pick and the second-round pick of the Giants next year, all day, every day, plus the second-round pick this year and the 3 pick overall. We're going to revisit this halfway through the season. Would you trade Cam Ward for Abdul Carter and the Giants' first and second-round picks next year? I think the answer is going to be pretty clear halfway through the season. I could be wrong.
Okay, again.
I could be totally wrong, and you guys can laugh at me.
Again.
And I'll take it. I'll do something. I'll eat my hat on the air or something. We'll make up something fun and embarrassing for me to do.
Again,
You'll have to finally
it
admit that
doesn't
lemon
matter.
lime Gatorade is indeed yellow.
Okay,
and
that's a
not
deal.
green.
That's a deal.
among other things. That's just part
No,
of it.
I'm not going to take that because in his heart he really don't believe it. So him saying it doesn't make a difference.
I'll drink the greenest Gatorade that they make.
But again, it boils down to this, because I understand you're saying they can get the picks and, you know, they have more chances to hit because they got more picks, but they also got more chances to not hit. But I don't want to litigate that right now. But we don't believe, well, there are many out there that don't believe that the Titans will be a good team next year, right? Next year's draft, when it comes to quarterbacks, will be much better next year than it was this year, right? That's what everybody is telling me.
In theory.
Right? In theory, it's going to be better. Okay, they're not going to, and I get it. It's over with. This year's over with. We're just trying to accomplish this goal that we set of so many picks within the first 100 picks, so many picks, so many years. We're just trying to accomplish that. Next year's draft is going to be much better at the quarterback position, at least. And when it's better at the quarterback position, the whole draft is better. That's just the way it is.
Okay. Go ahead.
So if we don't think that they are going to be a good team this season, and the draft is going to be better for quarterbacks next season, they're going to have a top 3 pick, let's say, next season. I can still accomplish what I want to accomplish next season, all while having my quarterback. Next year's draft is going to be better.
Possibly.
So I may even get what they were going to give me this year. I may get that, or I may get something even better.
A couple of texts. One texter says, if the 2 coaching staffs that are on the hot seat wanted Cam Ward, that says a lot. Another texter says, this is like when you and your buddies come up with a parlay and everyone that's participating thinks it's going to hit, but everyone with a clear mind on the outside is skeptical and don't think it's going to hit. Also, the other organizations that wanted him were Cleveland and the Giants, which are bozo organizations.
Why is it that the person that is not optimistic is the clear thought person? I don't get that part. Your text is being biased, and I understand why. Why isn't it that the people that are contrary, that think it's going to work, why can't they be the clear-minded individuals?
It's based on probability, playing the percentages, and not the emotional attachment you have to one player or one decision.
But it's not just an
The
emotional
decision in the now.
attachment. Is a financial attachment,
Yeah.
is a whatever attachment that is going to make your organization better. That's what you attach to.
I presented the Nobel Prize guy that studied all this. It's not just
You
me.
don't see that's
the Nobel Prize guy.
Really, that is the
He
problem.
won the Nobel Prize.
When we start interjecting Nobel Prize winners into
He studied
sports,
20 drafts.
no, he don't need to be studying 20 drafts. He need to be doing what he got a Nobel Prize in doing. He need to be doing that. I don't want him doing my draft to be all right and stuff.
I think
we don't want him to be right.
I think Liam on our text line speaks for a lot of Titans fans. The optimal scenario is Ward shows promise, but we lose most of our games and trade down next year and get the haul.
Right. That's the Patriots, right, with Drake May this past year, right? They feel like they got their guy, and now they still picked high. They got Vrabel, and now they can start building a roster around that. But here's what I want for the next hour. I want Titans fans, because if you're listening to this show and you're listening to this subject, this is so much riding on Cam Ward, and you've got the new stadium. I want to know from those that have had an experience so far, taking a look at, hey, what would it take to get into the new stadium, the new Nissan Stadium? I've seen the renderings. I live in East Nashville. I drive by the construction every day. Adam, you do as well. It's starting to take form. It's exciting. But we're going to talk about with my man Plaz. George Plaz is going to join us. And he went on his show, which you can hear on our family of stations now. He discussed his experience talking to the Titans because he has been a PSL holder since the stadium opened, since the first stadium opened. So I want to know what other people's experiences are, because George is pretty pointed about what his experience has been like. And to be honest, it falls in line with just about everybody else I've talked to. And it's a common theme. They're charging way too much, and they're being very, very secretive on what the seats actually cost until you get in there. They're also telling everybody they're selling a lot. it's hitting with a lot of skepticism right now. But I want to hear from people that have actually gone through the process.
At 615-737-1025. By the way, Randy says if Cam ends up being good, Willie's punishment should be having to co-host with Jared. 615-737-1025. That would be quite the program. The 615 Open Charity Golf Tournament benefiting Folds of Honor presented by Gary Force Acura at Hermitage Golf Course is on Thursday, May 29th. That's 4 weeks from today. Sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com. D. Mace Finken and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are proudly presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, pleased to be joined on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by the Dean of Nashville Sports Talk Radio, the one and only George Plaster. You can hear George Plaster weekdays from 3 to 5 on 94.9 The Fan. Hello, George. How are you?
Adam, how are you? And by the way, that intro just means I'm old.
Well, and George, I don't think you would want to be compared to Dean Wormer from Animal House, or
Maybe he does,
or Dean Martin from Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield. Famous
Willie,
deans from movies.
All I know about Dean Wormer is that I learned in the movie that cucumbers are sensual, not sensuous.
Yes. I think that was Dean Wormer's wife that was pointing that out.
Yes, and I think at the point that she said all that, she'd had a few.
she had a few pops by the time she shared that
or
information.
As you used to say, she had a taste for the grape.
A taste for the grape. She did, indeed. She had a fun time at the toga parties, I recall, in Animal House. But
did.
Yeah, she
there
did.
was a lot of extracurriculars at that party.
Yes, a zest for life. But George, we're going to be doing
a
this
zest for life.
Yes. So we're going to be doing this going forward. First, tell people where because I from time to time will get somebody saying, hey, you and George aren't doing a show together anymore. What is he doing? Is he still doing a show? And I point out where you are, but share that for folks that fall into that category.
Yeah, we're on 94.9 The Fan, although one day I called it The Game. I came real close, Willie, one day to, at the commercial where you say, we'll be back in a moment. This is 94.9 The Fan. I came really close to using a station that I used to work for.
You've been on a few.
Yeah, that's probably not a good idea. But anyway, we're on 94.9 weekdays, Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Kelly Holcomb is with me, Billy Derrick alongside, and Billy takes a lot of shots from Kelly.
Yes, Kelly is not afraid to throw shots at anybody, including us when he's on with the silly underdog picks. And so I'm hoping there'll be a comeback in that area too, because let's just be honest, the title was won way too easily this year by Chris Sanders. We need better competition next year.
It's not that you need better competition. You need more sensible competition.
Yeah.
Chris picked one, and he just won the whole thing with one pick.
It was ridiculous. He won like 5 Hail Marys.
Yeah.
5 16-point underdogs, and the thing was over by October. But we digress.
Incarnate Word and Lehigh.
Yes. Stands on both sides of the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
George, he famously closed out the competition by picking against his alma mater. He picked Michigan to beat Ohio State at the end of the college football season.
And then accepted the points.
Yeah, he accepted the points. That's making
what
it even
they
worse.
should do is have a ceremony where they take his old Ohio State helmet and rip all those stupid decals off it.
We actually suggested
the Buckeye.
We actually suggested that.
Yes, several forms of penance for doing that.
Oh, absolutely. I think, first of all, I don't think you can be a Buckeye for life if you do that.
No.
We totally agree. Totally agree. So,
That's
George,
embarrassing.
speaking of stands, you kind of went off on your show the other day, and I've shared it with these guys too, because we just spent some time, as we do most days now, talking about the direction of the Titans moving into the new stadium. But what has gotten very little coverage right now is how the process is going for selling the tickets. But if you, as you do, have sort of a pulse of the community, and you are unique in that you are a day one PSL holder, the consensus that I have heard from you and others that I know that are in that same boat, whether they are part of a business that has bought a suite or just a longtime Titans fans, they're getting a common experience with the sticker prices of the new PSLs.
Yeah, and look, you and I lived this, okay? There's some hosts out there who act like they did, and then you find out they were 14 years old and they didn't know squat about it. You and I were part of this kind of on the firing line. You think about how many hours we donated to Rick Region in the NFL Vote Yes referendum in 1996. They couldn't have possibly paid for all that. So that said, Willie, I'm a 27-year season ticket holder of the Titans, and I'm a 27-year season ticket holder of the Preds, basically because I felt like if I was going to ask other people to buy tickets, I probably needed to do the same thing. And over the years in the Titans situation, before my dad died, he used the tickets most of the time. These days, I use them a lot. You've sat up there with me. And, I feel like right now we're being screwed over completely. And I've kept the notes of what I went off on a couple of days ago. First of all, PSLs, personal seat licenses. There's nothing personal about them, because what ends up happening is that you pay this PSL fee, which is kind of a ransom, and you get to control for 10 home games that's your seat. But when all the other great events that are going to come to the Dome Stadium happen, you don't have first dibs on anything. Now, the suite holders do, which indicates that the Titans absolutely have the software to do that. They just don't give a damn. They don't care about their fans. And so, you get the answer when I was over there, well, why don't I have the ability first come, first serve to be first in line for my tickets for other events? You get they don't do that in Cleveland, and they don't do that in Buffalo. These are the talking points that they're using. And as I told her, I said, I don't give a damn about Cleveland, and I don't want to hear about Buffalo. I live in Nashville.
Okay, so let me stop you on that one, George, because here's what I think is important when you say that why should a Nashville person worry about how the Browns or the Bills are doing it? Well, what's unique about Nashville and this facility? It's going to have a roof. We know that the city is going to want to have college football games on Labor Day weekend here, probably some pretty good ones. They want to have college football playoff games. They have a chance for a Super Bowl, which might be his own entity, World Cup, all of that stuff. That may be beyond what a PSL should be reasonable. Plus, there's a lot of opportunities for concerts year-round that weren't there before. At Bridgestone Arena, where you have the same thing, you do get that first right of refusal, correct?
I certainly am given the opportunity as a season ticket holder to purchase in advance.
Yes. So
the Titans
aren't giving you that.
Just simply, they don't give a damn. They have the software because their suite holders are being given that consideration.
So I think that's a very important point, that if you're going to pay for a PSL, I think it's very reasonable to say, we'll give you the first crack of these events that are coming, because what Nashville can bring is unique compared to Buffalo or Cleveland.
Absolutely. And what we bring, you're not going to freeze while you're here.
Yeah. They're going to have the opportunity for some big events because of our city, right? And how it falls and the downtown and all of that.
So, Willie, I went in there, even though I've been a very vocal critic of this, I still went in with an attitude that I was going to try to see if there was pricing that could fit, let's just call it, my budget. I'm not a millionaire. I don't have a trust fund. Although, if any of you would like to contribute, I'll be glad to hand out a phone number. I don't know how that works, but I'd like to have one. And so I went in there with the attitude of trying to see if I could make something work. I had been told all the horror stories in the lower level and the second level, which appears to be the Titans saying, only the rich are eligible. The pricing on the first and the second levels is insane. It is just ridiculous. Upstairs, it's better, but people like me who live on a budget need to know what it is we're getting into. So about the time the young lady, who was very nice, thinks she's about to close the deal, I said, hold on a second. I'm not doing anything today. I need to know exactly what the price points are in different areas of the stadium. Okay, and they show you those while you're there. But then I said, okay, give me a copy of this stuff so I can go home and, put pen to paper and I'll get back with you. We can't do that. Why not? Well, we've been directed we can't do that. And I said, well, what are you trying to hide?
Yeah,
And
why,
she said,
why is
well,
the secrecy?
She goes, nobody else has asked for that. Well, first of all, I told her, I said, I don't give a damn if anybody else has asked or not. I pay for me. It's my budget we're working on. I said, if you think for 1 minute that after showing me all these films and all this two-tone blue, that I'm just going to walk in and go, oh, I'm Titans forever. Whatever you want to charge me, I'm in. It doesn't work that way with me. I go home and kind of plot it out and see. And so she tells me no one else has asked. And I said, well, I don't really see what that has to do with anything. I said, just give me a copy of them. And she said, I can't do that. And I said, well, I got news for you. Then we can't deal with each other.
Well, that's what I've tried to come up with a reason in my mind as to why. And Adam, I tasked you because you're the best that I know of navigating the World Wide Web. And Plaz, I think I'm better along the spectrum than you are.
I think basically about 90% of the world is.
Plaz would be in the low 5th percentile. Or what did Eli Gold say? The on-ramp to the information superhighway. But Adam is the best.
Eli Gold's line?
Yes. The on-ramp to the information superhighway. That's where George is still on the on-ramp.
Willie takes pictures of his computer screen with his cell phone.
Right. So I'm a little higher up, but not by much. But Adam is really good at finding. So I asked Adam, can you find me information of what PSLs cost in the new stadium? And I can't figure out why it's so hard to find this.
This was the best. This was the best I could come up with. On the Titans website, in the section about the new stadium, they have a frequently asked questions section. And one of the questions is, how much will PSLs cost? And this is what the
reasonable question.
Yes, this is what the Titans wrote. Quote, depending on what type of game day experience is most important to you, this building is designed to have something for everyone. We've said all along that we are committed to making similar price points available in the new stadium as there are in the current stadium. We stand by that promise. Nearly 40% of the building will be set at $3,500 or under, with over 30 different price points and experiences to choose from.
But why so nebulous? Why?
I don't know.
Well, because some of it is obscene.
Oh my goodness.
And Willie, you and I have heard from people who have had seats from day one, that are down in the lower bowl. And then they find out that, it would take $76,000 to pay for the 4 PSLs in a seat that's comparable. Now, one of the things that surprised me, because I've got a pretty good idea, the seat that I'm in right now would be about $3,000 per PSL. But the season ticket cost of that thing goes up by about 75 to 80%.
So you're close to double your season ticket, and you were in the upper deck, right?
Right. And so I said to her, I said, have you looked at your product? It sucks. And I said, y'all's attitude is really ballsy to just think that you're going to lop a 70% increase besides this PSL ransom. I said, this is not right. So anyway, my whole point, she said she's going to call me in the next day or two, and I'm going to tell her, look, I'm not playing this game with you. either send me the prices, and Willie, I would have agreed because they knew going in that I'm a radio sports talk shows. Because when she started all the
this wasn't some
talk,
secret mission on your part to try to be a spy for the public. You told them up front who you are, and they should know who you are by this point.
Right.
You've been there for 27 years.
So I know you want me to sort of lay out who the culprits are in this. Yes.
Well, yeah. Well, I thought yes.
I thought
we were waiting with bated breath for you to tell us.
Yes,
George, who are the culprits in this?
On the Titans front, certainly Amy Adams, who gets more free passes, than anybody. She signed off on this crap. The architect of it is the team president, Burke Nihill. Burke Nihill, I made an attempt, and I'll admit this part's going to get a little personal. I made an attempt last May to get him on the air. I also asked him to speak to my downtown Kiwanis club. And since Burke Nihill has been in town, he has never once returned a phone call or a text of mine. And so I confronted him with this in January. And I told him, I said, part of my job is to get your side of the story, even if I don't agree with it. And Willie, you know full well, there have been times I have hammered on sports people, but I've also allowed them to come on the show and give their side of it.
Completely.
Well, I will do the same here, but I'm not calling Burke Nihill anymore. I'm damn sick and tired of being treated that way. If he wants to come on my show, he is welcome to, but he's going to have to call me. I'm not calling him anymore. Anything I'm telling you on the air right now, I said to his face in January, and I'll be honest, it was not a very pleasant conversation. What I said to him was, you owe it to the public when media people approach you to either call them back, text them back. This "I'm too good to talk to you" is BS. Now, that's culprit number one. Culprit number two is the Metro Council. Okay? As a friend of mine said to me earlier this week, sports teams can do what they want to do. They can charge whatever they want to charge. And you, as a United States citizen, have the right to either deal with it or tell them to go jump in the lake. And normally I agree with that, except for one thing. Our taxpayer money is funding hundreds of thousands of dollars of this project. And those 40 idiots in the Metro Council didn't ask a damn thing in our defense. How are you going to sell the tickets? What price plan? None of that. As I said on my show, they farted on it.
Well, George, they know, like everybody else know, that football is a drug, and you've been hooked on it since the day it became national. And they know, just like anything else, they can charge whatever they want to, and we all gonna, be and moan. It's not right, which is not, but they're going to continue to do it. The minute they said we're charging PSLs for this new stadium, they knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't have to charge PSLs, but they did. So they're just telling you, yes, we hear what you're saying, but we don't care. And that's the part that I kind of, sort of look at sideways, like, okay, you hear what the fan base is saying. You hear what George has been saying for months, but yet and still you are not upfront with this. You're not trying to talk to people about this. You're just giving them sometimes numbers, and you're just telling them this, and you buy it, and then they just move on to the next person, because you're not giving the people that have been loyal to you since you've been here, you're not giving them anything.
Derek, what's bad about this is that when the team first got here and when you played, This was a real home field advantage. But you know as well as I do that what's about to happen with this is that this is going to become a lot like SoFi out in Los Angeles, where when the 49ers come to town, they take over. Okay? Now, I don't know how smart Burke Nihill is. I don't know if he sees that or even cares. And, you know, it appears that he sold Amy this bill of goods. But then the first time they get in the playoffs, they'll send out protect our house. Really? How about you protect our house?
George Plaster. Sorry. Go ahead,
You
George.
have it both ways.
Didn't mean to cut you off there, George. Of course, George Plaster, host of the George Plaster program, weekdays from 3 to 5 p.m. on 94.9 The Fan. George, it's great to talk to you. We'll do this more often. We'll talk soon.
Adam, you take care. I'll try to cool down. And
no, I like this, George, man. Come on, keep it going.
Derek, you and I have always had that. Okay, you guys take care.
Thank you, George. George Plaster on the program. A fired up George Plaster. That's who we want. That's who we want.
And so I would like to hear from others that have gone through this process on some level and ask, what has your experience been like? Do you want to go to games in the new stadium? Have you vetted that? Are you a PSL holder like George is? And I am worried about something he said at the end there. If you look at SoFi, if you look at the Vegas Stadium for the Raiders, and if you look at some other new places, and it's happened in this city in the current stadium.
Recall the Vikings game last season.
If you're pricing your fans out of the seats, the other team's fans are going to take those seats. That's who's going to end up having enough money. Is ticket brokers will buy the PSLs. Your suite holders will not care who wins the game. They'll just be a bunch of rich people who are there to be able to tell everybody, I go to the new stadium. And fans that are there to cheer are
their grapes.
Yes, they have the taste for the grape.
615-737.
So who do you want to be in your stadium?
1025. 615-737-1025. How has your experience been if you are looking to buy
and why won't they put a price structure out there?
That as well. Is your experience the same as George Plaster's? Have you had a pleasant experience? You let us know. 615-737-1025. This week's Nashville's best deal is Prince's Hot Chicken, the original and iconic hot chicken joint. For a limited time, grab half off a $25 gift card at theGameNashville.com/deals.
A quick word from Loan Pronto. Remember, Loan Pronto wants you to know that if you're in that boat of being a homeowner, but also looking around at these uncertain economic times, trying to predict the future, and also maybe looking at some credit card debt, some other bills that are piling up, maybe some car payments where the interest rate is really high and you're not able to make a dent in it, make sure you remember that Loan Pronto is there for you because they have a lot of options for helping you tap into your home's equity to get the cash you need to get out of that problem and get on solid financial footing. Most homeowners who do this end up wiping out all their credit card debt and cutting their monthly expenses by $1,000. So if you want to stop the stressing about this, call Loan Pronto and see if they can relieve some of that stress. They've got some great programs. Call for fast debt relief now, 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Thanks to George Plaster for joining us in the previous segment and airing his grievances. It's not Festivus, but you can air your grievances on our program about your experience with Titans PSLs. Let's go to Edward on our phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com. Edward, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys. I very seldom call in, but I'm on a stationary bike in a gym in Seward, Alaska. I wanted to make some comments about George Plaster also. But what seems to me is missing with the Titans is to build focus groups to find out what the fans are thinking, what the media is thinking. I just came off of a cruise, and they brought around a QR code and put it on. They said, "We want your feedback. We want information so we can make this better." Have you ever seen anything like that?
Nope. Not enough.
Anyway, and my comment about George Plaster. The sports world in Nashville, Tennessee would not be where it is without George Plaster. Really, I used to listen back in the 90s when you'd come back from the Toronto Blue Jays, I believe.
Now you're going back to the beginning now, Edward. You're going back to the beginning.
Going back. Yes, and so he took you under his wing and really moved you along in your career.
He
I believe
absolutely
that. I
did.
think you probably do also. But I worked for an organization there in Nashville, and I was having a fundraiser. And it was out in Podunk, USA. And George said, "Sure, I'll come and speak at that breakfast." He said, "Can you get me a hotel room?" I said, "I will." So I called the hotel. This is the kind of town that rolls up the street sidewalks at night. And so I said, I got to have one room for the night. And the manager said, "Okay, I leave at 8. I'll leave the key under the mat of the room." I said, "Oh my goodness." I said, "George is never going to go for this." So I called George back and I said, "Mr. Plaster, I do have your room, and the key is under the mat of the door." And I was like, here he goes. He's going to say, "I'm not going up there." And he was a hesitation, and he goes, "What room number?" That's the kind of guy George is. So my hat is off to y'all having him on. And 94.7, is that where he's at?
94.9 The Fan.
Yeah,
94.9 The Fan.
Part of our family of stations.
Weekdays from 3 to 5.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Good
you,
show.
Edward.
Thank you, Edward.
I do want to read a story from PaulKaharski.com that Paul wrote about a month ago with the headline, "New Titan Stadium PSL sales ahead of anticipated pace." He writes, "The Titans' poor 3-year performance and disappointing 2024 season have not affected PSL sales for the new Nissan Stadium as much as many outsiders might expect. The franchise was optimistic all along, and things have gone even better than anticipated. With the team now entering the third, final, and least expensive phase of sales, expectations are high. All of those sales will continue to take place through meetings at the team's Titans house. Premium seats went on sale in June of 2024, and the team expected that period to run to February of 2025. But that tier of tickets sold out much faster than anticipated in mid-August of 2024. Those tickets are more expensive than premium seats in the current Nissan Stadium by a wide margin, with a limited number of the most costly personal seat licenses going for as much as $75,000. The Titans see the increase there, largely absorbed by corporations who will be entertaining clients, helping subsidize fans in other seats."
I believe that information came from the Titans, right? And I don't think their records are public, even though it is a publicly funded stadium. As we just pointed out, you cannot get a straight answer on what the tickets cost. And I realized they were going to the original PSL holders first to give them the first dibs on, do you still want your, same type of seat that you have in the old stadium, et cetera? You get the first crack, all of that. But at this point, they still do not have a list of prices. I have also gotten a lot of feedback from people. It does not line up with that anywhere close to what Paul is being told. And I'm not saying Paul is wrong to report that. He is reporting what he's being told from sources that know. And I looked at this too. On their website, it says, "Our premium seat memberships in the new Nissan Stadium sold out faster than we anticipated. That is not the feedback I have gotten from virtually everybody that was a PSL holder or suite holder. And when they went in to get it, if you went in there and said, oh, sure, I bought the new ones, I want to hear from you, because I'm getting a very, very different message on what the demand has been so far for these tickets. 615-737-1025.
Let's go to Clay on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Clay, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. I listen a lot. I call in every once in a while. The last time I called in, I think I was accused of calling in just to talk about the Doors or to talk to Willie, because I'm a passionate Vanderbilt fan. I've also voiced my opinion on the show of what I think of Derek Mason, not only as a football player, but as a man. And I was a PSL holder for the first 6 years. And I believe it was 2004, Derek, you can correct me if that's not right, when they got rid of Derek, Steve McNair, Samari Rolls, all those guys. I gave up my tickets and have not been a PSL holder since. But I am, concerned about, because I've noticed I watch the home games on television because I do care. I want the Tennessee Titans to have a good football team and, bring the city a championship one day. I think that'd be fantastic. But, the team hasn't been very good recently. I think George is right in a lot of ways that maybe, the level of care is not, where it should be. But anyway, the prices, I'm sure, are going to be, astronomical. That's just the world we live in now. I know what my tickets were, back in the day, and I know we're going a long way back, but I sat in the south end zone and attended every home game and wore my Derek Mason jersey to every home game because that was my guy. But anyway, so I am a concerned fan, what's going to happen going forward, how we build this team back to being good, and how we put people that care about the Tennessee Titans in the seats. So I just wanted to call and chime in with that.
Thank you for the call, Clay. And we will react to Clay's call. We'll also continue to take your reaction at 615-737-1025. Join Big Joe in 1025 The Game from 10 a.m. to noon at Coleman Tractor of Nashville this Saturday for Kubota Orange Days. There will be exclusive deals on compact tractors, zero turns, and more, with special financing available. The sale runs from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. with demos, deals, giveaways, and lunch from 11 to 1. That's at the Coleman Tractor of Nashville, located at 7221 Whites Creek Pike in Jolton this Saturday. D-Mace Fingan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game, talking the new Titan Stadium, PSLs and such based on our conversation with George Plaster earlier this hour. Let's go to Tommy on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Tommy, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. My wife and I had a great experience. We have been PSL holders in the lower bowl, corner of the end zone, since day one. My wife and I and our two sons, or any combination, would go to the games. And now that my sons are grown and have real jobs, we've decided that we're going to drop down to 2 tickets. Well, we went into the meeting at Titan's house kind of leery about a tough sales thing. It was not pushy at all. Our rep was very upfront, said, look, we know our product is not real good right now. We want to work with you guys. When we dropped from 4 tickets to 2, we went up to the second level instead of being in the 100 level. We walked out of there paying little. They applied all of our PSL money through the years toward the new purchase, and we walked out of there cheap. We walked out of there writing them a check for $600 total PSL for those 2 seats. And the only hitch is that we have to go and continue going to the games at Nissan Stadium until the new one opens. So we have to watch 2 more years of bad football before we get in there and are able to apply those toward everything at the new stadium. But I was very impressed, and I think if people have groups of 8 tickets or 6 tickets or 4 tickets, if you can drop back and do that, then everything you've paid in advance on PSL is going to be pushed forward to what you're buying on the new thing. There's a way to save a little money right there.
That sounds like a good strategy.
Thank you for calling, Tommy.
A family that is in the situation that they're in. I was going to ask Tommy what the price is for the season tickets in the second level, how it compares to your old seat. Because
Tommy, if you're listening, text us.
Yeah,
let us know.
I would love it. It was because I think that, and this makes some sense, because you've got to not only buy the PSL, but then you've got to buy the season ticket, and that season ticket's not going to be cheap. And so I do hear that from some people who still want to be in there. They've had to do what he's done, downsize the amount of tickets, or so he's done 2 things to make the price work better.
Exactly.
He's downsized the number of tickets, and he's moved to a less expensive seat. And he feels good about that. And that's good business, right?
But,
that's exactly what you should do. But what happens in the net result? You're losing Titans diehard fans like George and like him, or you're shrinking the number from 4 to 2. And who is going to likely end up with those seats? Somebody who is not a Titans fan.
Tyler on our text line says, Willie, what appears to be happening is the Titans are becoming the Raiders of the South. Individuals aren't the ones driving these purchases of premium seats. Once the individual season ticket holders have turned down their seats, large corporate entities are the ones buying blocks of the seats. Just like in Vegas, and Nissan Stadium will just be a destination for client entertainment rather than true fans of the team.
Do you guys think it's reasonable that a PSL holder should get the first right of refusal to other events besides the Titans?
Yes.
Yes, outside of possibly
the
World
Super Bowl.
Cup,
Yes.
Or the Super Bowl, right? Those
something
things
like that,
yeah.
Olympics, something like that.
I agree with that.
But anything else, concerts and national, no, you should get the first right of refusal.
That would be a good selling point, I think, and something that would have me maybe willing to pay a little bit more, because it's not just necessarily buying tickets to Titans games. It's being somebody that's going to use the stadium a lot and have a perk for the investment that you're making.
But I am with
those are Nashville people that would do that.
Tommy has texted back in. He says $18,000 a year.
Okay, I don't know what that compares. How does that compare to his previous seat?
I will ask him.
So the tickets are $18,000, and that's on top of what you had to pay for PSL, which he got a credit back because it went from 4 to 2, and then he moved
Right.
up.
For those that don't know, if you were an old PSL holder,
Depending on
right?
how much money you have
and as
left.
George pointed out, we did several shows way back in the day, so I can go back to these times. And I remember when George purchased the PSL, is when you owned that seat for the old stadium, they have given you a perk. You can apply your old PSL fee towards the new PSL fee, but the new PSL fee is higher per seat. And then you have to buy the tickets as well, which will also be higher.
I understand you use the Super Bowl as an example. I understand with an event like that, if PSL
You don't control the
holders
seats for that.
don't have the right of first refusal. But for anything else that comes to Nissan Stadium, whether it's a concert or a Premier League soccer friendly or WrestleMania or something like that, I think that if you are paying that much money, you should absolutely have the right to buy tickets for your seat before anybody else.
And I wonder too is because I don't know how the PSLs worked last time as far as parking. Maybe they gave you a parking pass depending on the number of seats you have. I don't know. I wonder what is the parking here, because they are not increasing parking, they're decreasing parking.
Parking's going to be an issue for a while.
It's going to be an issue. So are we talking, the PSL, the money for the PSL, the money for the actual ticket to the game, and a parking pass? Is all of that rolled into it? From what I gathered, some people that I've talked to said no.
Matt,
at least now it's not.
Matt on our text line says, my PSL cost was much higher from lower bowl to second level. Paid $13,000 for 2 PSLs after my credits. But the ticket cost only, in quotation marks, the ticket cost only raised roughly 15% to around $3,000 per seat per season. Regardless, ridiculously high, but they know us diehards will pay whatever. Also, while we don't get first right of refusal to special events, we do get season ticket member pre-sale for events that will allow it. It's up to the music artist or other event if they allow pre-sale.
And see, I think that the Titans should go to bat for their diehards. I think they would increase. They would win that battle if they said, no, we control the stadium. We control the rules. We're going to give because look, Adam.
Also, I just want to know
if you guys are both PSL holders, Adam might jump at the chance. I would say, Adam, do you want to go to WrestleMania? You say, absolutely. Derek might say, no, I'm not into that. And there could be another event that Derek's very interested in, but Adam has no. Either way, that should be part of the deal.
I was hoodwinked. That was not Tommy who texted us back. So I got fooled here.
Nah, you got fooled.
That's okay.
We all get fooled.
But it was a different Titans
I
person?
am going to fine you $100,000 for prank texting me.
Yes. Don't ever do that on this station. Especially
like what happened with the Falcons.
Oh, yeah, I see. But that was not a real person that texted you? Or
no,
that
it was
a
somebody
Titan
who
fan?
was
a different
posing as
Titans
Tommy.
fan.
Somebody else posing as Tommy.
Sorry, Tommy. My bad, Tommy.
Yeah, we're gonna sue you, Tommy.
Let's go to Chris again. $100,000 fine for that texter for prank texting me. Let's go to Chris on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Chris, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, if Tommy's in the second level, it's not $18,000 because I sure would not have signed up for that.
That's true.
But much like Plaster, I have been a day one PSL holder. So I'll also say that Tommy probably bought in late because I was in the north end zone and have been there again since day one. 3 couples, we all bought seats together. And I was not making much money in those days. But the PSL at that point in time cost me $750 a piece. If I were to get similar seats in the end zone in the lower bowl, it would be about 13 times that for the PSL. So I don't know what the ticket prices were there. But the only credit that I got was what I originally paid, not what the price of the current PSL is today. So somebody who just bought PSLs last year, they're getting $2,000 credit towards their new PSL, while I'm still getting the measly $750,
which doesn't make much of a dent.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so I did show up. We did move up to the second level. We're close to the end zone in the second level, kind of in the corner. And I luckily got a windfall shortly before we went to that meeting because I'm not sure that I would have signed up for it had I not received that. But the way I look at it is, I'm almost 63 years old now. Been a football fan my whole life, and my luck is I wouldn't go to that new stadium, and that's the year that they'd go on a tear and wind up winning the Super Bowl. So we did sign up, and the PSLs were $6,500 a piece, and the tickets though are reasonably priced to where we are. They may have gone up. I don't even think they went up 15%. I think they went up. They're going to be about 10% higher per game for the tickets in the second level than we paid in the end zone.
Now, is there something with that PSL in terms of parking?
No, there's going to be. My understanding is the parking is going to be much more limited than it is today. So they're going to have satellite lots. Now I'm cheap, and I don't want to tell my secret here, but I found a lot where I don't have to pay. That's that's about a good one beer walk from a parking stadium. So that's what I do.
Okay.
Thank you for the call, Chris, and thank you to everybody for your reaction. Excellent conversation, and we can pick up this conversation in a little bit. But coming up next, Elliot Freeman, Sportsnet NHL insider, will join us. We'll discuss the Stanley Cup playoffs and the Nashville Predators. That's coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingen, 1025-1063. The Game. D. Mace Fingen and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan joined on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by Sportsnet NHL Insider, Elliot Freeman, presented by Old National Bank. Get old. Elliot, is there a shortage of blood pressure monitors in the greater Toronto area ahead of tonight's Game 6?
Monitors and medication. You want to hear something really funny?
Yes.
So a couple minutes ago, like 10 minutes ago, my brother-in-law called me. And, my brother-in-law and I get along really well. We're married to sisters. And I'm like, but it's rare for him to call. And so I was like, hey, everything okay? He goes, I need you to convince me that everything is going to be okay. He's a huge Leaf fan, like a huge Leaf fan. He's not even sure he can watch the game tonight.
So it's got to be excruciating.
Yes. For those who have not been paying attention, the Maple Leafs opened a 3-0 series lead on the Ottawa Senators, but the Senators have won the past 2 games. Game 6 is in Ottawa tonight. So a lot of talk about the demons of old for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But Elliot, I want to discuss the physicality that we've seen in these Stanley Cup playoffs. We've already seen 2 suspensions, both in the just completed Battle of Florida series. We've seen a lot of hits that were probably suspension worthy, perhaps. I saw you report just a little bit ago that Mark Scheifele will not be playing in Game 6 for the Winnipeg Jets after he took a high hit from Braden Shen in the game last night. What is your thought on just the overall physicality of these playoffs so far? I know that it's the Stanley Cup playoffs, so these things are going to happen, but it feels like every night, and I think it was John Cooper after one of the recent games, he's like, I'm tired of talking about all of these suspension-worthy hits. What have you made about the physicality so far?
I think that it happens like this now almost every year, Adam, that, I have to prepare to write for the weekend, and I was thinking about it, and, there's a number of things that we forget. Number one, you cannot play 82 games in the regular season like these guys play 28 games in the playoffs. It's not humanly possible. So I don't want to use the word coast, but I think there's an understanding that because you can't do that, the game looks really different. Like I think in every sport, the intensity, like the 4 major team sports in North America, the intensity goes up during the playoffs everywhere. It always does. There's more on the line. But I don't think there's a sport of those where the game changes as much as it does in the NHL from game 82 of the regular season to game 1. Number one, everybody forechecks, and everybody forechecks hard. That's number one. Number two, watch how many big hits take place around the center ice red line, because that's the icing line. And so teams make it really hard for you to get there. So you can change players or relieve pressure or anything like that.
I'm thinking of the hit that Tom Wilson laid on Alex Carrier in that series.
Perfect example. Perfect example. Those happen a lot more now. And like just the ferocity of these hits, the game changes incredibly. Like one of the things I say, and a lot of fans have tweeted at me saying they agree with it, is that fans want to know when they buy a ticket or they sit down and they root for a team that the players care as much as they do. In the playoffs, nobody questions it. Like what these guys do to themselves, what these guys do to each other, it's on a whole other level. Even players who don't throw hits in the regular season or don't block shots in the regular season, they're doing it here. And I think that's the thing that we always forget is that, people say the referees change. Like they've had a lot of issues in the playoffs. There's no sugarcoating that, but the players go to a whole other level. And I think the referees struggle to adapt to that.
Over the past couple of days, Elliot, we've seen 2 heavy hitters enter the coaching market, Mike Sullivan and Rick Tocchet. You add them to a list that includes Joel Quenneville, John Tortorella, Peter Laviolette. etc. Can you recall a time when this many prominent head coaches were available?
No, you know what? I was thinking about this today too. I think it's a lot, and I think what it's also doing, Adam, is that it has changed also a lot of teams' lists. Like I think a lot of teams have, a lot of these guys at the top of their list, but if you don't get one, or you can't for whatever reason, if you don't get one, I think a lot of the secondary lists are very different. So I think you're going to hear situations where certain guys are available in one case, or certain guys are being interviewed in one case, might not be the same guys who are getting interviewed in another case. So I think there's going to be a lot of that. Sullivan, I get very mixed messages on Boston. There are some people who believe he will be a candidate there. There's others who don't. I still think the Rangers, to me, that's the guy they got to get. I think the Flyers have a lot of interest in Tocchet. I am not sure about Laviolette. I'm trying to determine what his plans are. And Tortorella, same deal. I'm not sure what his plans are. Laviolette and Tortorella both had another year under contract. So if they are interested in coaching, but they want to take a break, they could do that too. And maybe they're finally just at the position in their careers where they say, you know what, it's time. Like Tortorella, there had been some talk about him potentially joining the Flyers front office. The other thing I'll say this too is that there's still teams alive in the playoffs that people wonder about if their team loses, would they make change? And the other one is that I've heard that there are situations where teams that have coaches have looked at looked at what's out there and said, how do we feel about it, and do we need to make a change?
Are the Predators one of those teams, Elliot?
I was waiting for that question as I was saying it. I was like, I know what the follow-up here is going to be.
You got it.
At this point in time, Adam, I don't. As we do this phone call today at 1:09 your time on a Thursday afternoon, I don't have any reason to believe that the Predators are making any kind of change. Andrew Brunette is leaving for Sweden and Denmark for the World Championships as part of the Team Canada staff. I don't have any reason to believe you guys are doing it. I think it is naive to the extreme to look at the quality of people who are out there right now, Adam, and think that they hadn't at least discussed it internally. But I don't have any reason to believe, just should we contact any of these people? How do we feel about any of these people? I don't think you're a good organization if you don't at least ask it internally, but I have no reason to believe as we do this right now, the Predators are going to be doing that.
Elliot Friedman is with us. So Elliot, take it a little further. What do you think it says about Andrew Brunette's stock, or I guess street cred around the league, that he was selected by Team Canada to be part of the coaching staff?
I don't know if that. I don't know if that changes anything, Willie. Number one, I think it's a good honor. You have a limited pool because it's for teams that are out of the playoffs. But number two, there's always guys who have a lot of interest in doing it. So I think the fact that they went to Brunette, it is a good thing. They do not mail in this tournament. This tournament is very important in terms of they want to see some guys who could be on their Olympic radar next year, especially some guys who might be near the cutoff line. So you want good coaching. Number two, Canada, we're one of the only countries that takes a lot of these tournaments. Everybody wants to win them, right? But our public wants to do well in them too, even though it's going on at the same time with the Stanley Cup playoffs. So it is considered a good appointment. I think it says something about how they feel about Brunette as a coach, that they would go to him and say, hey, would you like to come here and be part of this? This year, I only know of one coach, and that was Rick Tocchet, who declined. I think Tocchet was just tired at the end of this year. But so they do have usually good options to pick from here.
If if they're bringing back Andrew Burnett, and I tend to lean your way. I have no inside info to tell you that, but we see this in circles that we cover a lot in the different sports, Elliot. With college football might be maybe the best example, where a group of people will go to a coach and say, look, you're kind of on the hot seat here. Things didn't go well last year. We want you back, but we would like to see some tweaks, some changes on the staff so that what can be fixed gets fixed. How often does that happen in hockey?
It does happen a bit. I'm not surprised you're asking me this question, Willie, for one thing. It does happen from time to time. I don't always like it, and I'll be honest. Like in some cases, it's legit. I will say that, but in other cases, I think it's excuse making and putting the blame on the wrong people. I'm not always crazy about it. I have heard of situations before. They are rare, but they have happened. I think I remember quite the late Pat Quinn doing it once, where he got fired because he refused to fire an assistant coach. I'd have to remember the exact situation, but I remember him talking to me about it once. So that kind of thing has happened before. It isn't, like I said, I don't always like it, but it happens. Now, the other thing I'll say about this is a lot like Mike Sullivan, let's just say for argument's sake, the Predators were interested in him. He was making, I think, $5.5 million with the Penguins. And, it's going to be a big number. How do the Predators feel about that? Number two, if Rick Tocchet, he turned down a contract from Vancouver that was in the $4 million slightly above range. How do the Predators feel about that? And I'm not saying,
in other words, you'd be paying Andrew Burnett and then paying a huge fee to go after one of the top dogs or whatever.
Yes. And, Burnett would probably get a job somewhere, so there'd be a little bit of offset, but he could take his time. He could think about it. He could say, maybe not now. I don't like what's out there. And I'm not saying the Predators are cheap or anything like that, because I hate when people take that. It happens too much, and I can't stand that. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a factor.
One of the other series that I think is
and
really
also too, like, how do they feel about not only that, but how do they feel about paying a coach, $4 or $5 million? Not every NHL team believes in that.
Good point. And I think on the other thing that you addressed, we have seen coaches, like you just cited some hockey coaches, that are so loyal to their staff, they'll say, look, I'm not going to make one of my staff, who I feel strongly about, the sacrificial lamb, the offensive coordinator or the defensive coordinator. But I do think there's probably some times where the coach might agree. And remember, Barry Trotz is a former coach. If this discussion were to go on, this is all hypothetical, but maybe everybody agrees an addition to a staff, or not. You don't even have to subtract somebody necessarily, right? Maybe they agree that there's an ingredient that we're missing.
Yes, I still think that could happen. You're asking me very specific questions here, Willie, and it makes me think that the Predators are considering this, and I have heard rumors about that, but I don't know if it's true. It does happen. Like I said, I don't always like it, but it happens.
I'd love to get your thoughts on the Edmonton-LA series. For people, we're in the Central Time Zone, as you know, Elliot, and so you do have to stay up a little late to watch the end of the games for the Western Conference. But if you do, you've been rewarded with some amazing drama at the end of these games. But the dynamic of the way that the Oilers, who are banged up, and of course a central topic here, not having Matthias Ekholm, the way they have flipped the series against the Kings, there's a lot of former Preds in the mix there with Fiala and Arvidsson and some of these guys. It has been really something to watch.
It's, some of us do stay up after midnight in the Eastern Time Zone, Willie. You should know that. Okay.
Yes.
Some of it for work reasons, others because we love the sport. But the quality of hockey in these playoffs has been phenomenal. I'll tell you something about Arvidsson. I think Arvidsson was one of a number of Oilers who was very frustrated this year, just because I think like Toronto's had this problem too. Like when you have your superstars, and Edmonton's got two of the best in the league, and there's so much the core of your team, I think sometimes other guys struggle to find roles, or they feel they're not being given enough opportunity. And I think there's a bunch of Oilers guys, and Arvidsson would be one of them, who at times this year have been frustrated by that. And now they're taking advantage. They're out there and they're getting the chances. And I believe that coach, right from the first game of the playoffs, Chris Knobloch, he thought it was very important that some of their other players felt like they mattered. And to me, one of the biggest differences in that series is that the Oilers feel there's more guys they can play than the Kings. Where this series really changed was in that overtime game in Game 4, where the Kings were down to 9 forwards and 4 defensemen. They were exhausted, and the Oilers were skating rings around them. Meanwhile, the Oilers continue playing all their defensemen, all their forwards, and guys like Arvidsson have really, really stepped up. Like, this has been his time to shine, and he's done it. You know, Fiala and the Kings, like, they've let Edmonton off the mat. If they lose this series, they're going to regret it because they had them. They scored 12 goals in the first 2 games. Fiala and a lot of those other Kings players look great, and they let them off the mat, and now they're on the ropes. There'll be big regrets for the Kings if they don't win this series.
The thing that's so compelling about this first round, and every year this is the case, you have series where it's so close, just a couple of plays.
Mm-hmm.
And last year's Canucks-Predators series, for sure, would fall into this category. You go back for just a couple of plays, it could have switched, and maybe Nashville would win in 6 instead of losing in 6, or at least it goes to 7. The Wild, of course, are in one of these types of series with Vegas. Very, very close. The Wild scored a goal that easily could have put them up 3-2, and it was inches offside. Vegas wins in overtime. The Predators have Vegas's first pick. If they lose, the Predators would be guaranteed, now that Tampa's out, to have 3 picks in the top 24. We know the lottery is coming up on Monday. What are the Wild's chances, in your mind, Elliot, of winning 2 in a row and eliminating Vegas?
It sounds like an enormous challenge to win 2 in a row against them. I look at it this way. Right now, Willie, you got to win 1. This has been the best series that nobody talks about. Like, the Wild and the Golden Knights have put on a great series. I think Vegas is obviously the favorite, but there's no reason Minnesota can't do it. They've been right there with them. They've given them a fierce battle. They just got to win tonight. Worry about Game 7 later. They just have to win tonight.
Elliot,
and I don't see any reason why they can't do it.
Sorry about that, Elliot. Before we let you go,
no problem, man.
I do want to ask you about something that I find interesting. So the Hart Trophy finalists were announced today by the NHL. Leon Draisaitl, Connor Hellebuyck, and Nikita Kucherov. Yesterday, the Ted Lindsay Award finalists were unveiled, and that is the Most Outstanding Player Award as chosen by the players. That was Nikita Kucherov, Nathan MacKinnon, and Cale Makar. By the way, the Hart Trophy nominated by the Professional Hockey Writers Association. So I'm curious about, you've got Kucherov, MacKinnon, Makar as the players' MOP. You've got Draisaitl, Hellebuyck, and Kucherov as the writers' MVP. I'm curious for your point on that sort of disparity between the players' view of that award, the players' view of the most outstanding player versus the writers' view of the most valuable player.
You know what? I think I don't mind it. I find it very interesting too, Adam. And I think sometimes it just reminds us of, how differently we look at things. I'll tell you this, that I didn't have the top 3 on my ballot the same as either. And I'll tell you a quick story. A couple of years ago, there was one award. It was the Norris Trophy, the year Erik Karlsson won. I had real pushback from players, the most I've ever heard. Like, there were players who were really, they really gave it to me after that one. And I listened. I just said, okay, what do you guys think matters? Why didn't you like it? And I think that the players simply look at it. What they told me was, like, for a defenseman, they just disagreed with that year. But I think overall, they look at who do they think was the best player that season. Like, sometimes we look at, as the criteria is a bit different, the best player on their team or the most valuable player to their team. I think the players look at it as who did they see as like the best player that year. That's what they told me. And I have no problem. I think, to me, it seems perfectly normal that from time to time, players would see it differently than us. And I don't have a problem with that at all.
Elliot Freeman, Sportsnet NHL insider, joining us on the program, presented by Old National Bank. Get old, Elliot. Great stuff as always. Enjoy all of the game 6s tonight, particularly Toronto and Ottawa.
I'll tell my brother-in-law you're concerned about him. Okay,
I will. I am. I don't want him to be suffering. That doesn't sound fun at all.
I'll speak to you guys in a week.
Thanks, Elliot.
We'll do a checkup.
Yes, we will. Thank you, Elliot. Elliot Freeman on the program. All right, let's react to Elliot, particularly about what he has heard about Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. D-Mace Van Ginadonic 1025, 1063 The Game, presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Dunick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Always great to catch up with Elliot Freeman of Sportsnet. So we discussed it there with Elliot. And yesterday, as Willie and I were returning from Portland, avoiding poultry on the road, we received the email from the Nashville Predators announcing that Barry Trotz will hold a news conference on Monday afternoon. Earlier this week, I asked, where in the world is Barry Trotz? I also learned that Willie Dunick was unfamiliar with Carmen Sandiego, which really upset me. But
I've received some backlash from that.
I'm glad. You deserve some
should.
backlash.
Absolutely.
For not knowing Carmen Sandiego. But nevertheless, and when we received that email, I put my journalist hat on. Maybe it was one of those old-timey journalist hats, the fedora with the thing that says press sticking out of it that you see in the movies.
Can you please wear one of those hats?
I'm not a hat guy. I'm not a hat guy.
Wear one of those? I'm gonna get one.
All right,
you can wear it on to the show.
Okay, if you get it for me, I will wear it. But I'm not much of a hat guy, despite not having much hair on my head. But anyway, the Predators would not be announcing a news conference 5 days in advance if they were planning on moving on from Andrew Brunette, because the news would leak days beforehand. So, although I did hear Alex Doherty of the Tennessean on the morning show say he wasn't necessarily subscribing to that theory, and I understand that, the gut reaction that I have is that Andrew Brunette will be returning as coach. And this is different from last week when I said, with each passing day that we don't hear from Barry Trotz, it makes me think he's going to make a coaching change. But it does appear, that's the operative word, appear, that Brunette will be back. And I think Elliot's point about the plethora of highly qualified coaches is an interesting one. Because, gentlemen, what's the question whenever we talk about a coaching change in any sport? And we do that a lot on Sports Talk Radio. What's the first question people send back to you?
Who's out there?
Who are you going to hire instead?
Who's out there?
Mike Sullivan is available. Rick Tocchet is available. John Tortorella is available. Joel Quenneville is available. There are other coaches who have been winners in this league who haven't been coaching recently who are available, like Gerard Gallant or Jay Woodcroft. Peter Laviolette is available. I know the Predators wouldn't rehire Peter Laviolette. But the point is that there are a lot of very, very good coaches. And I can't recall a time when this many highly qualified coaches were available in the same cycle. So I know that we were all expecting, I think early on, that Brunette was going to be back. There was a moment there where we thought, maybe Barry Trotz will change his mind. But it does appear, Willie, that Brunette will return for a third season.
I subscribe to your vibe, and especially after you floated it out to Elliot. And he said there is nothing that he has heard. And this is part of it, right? If you wait and there's going to be a change, people like Elliot who have the pulse, Pierre LeBrun, some others, but Elliot is the best, in my opinion, it will get out. You can't hold it until Monday, right? If they're going to wait till Monday and then announce there's a big change, that's not going to make it that far. There's too many ways it gets out, and it's not from inside the building. You could have the tightest building of all time. It's agents and other people around the league. They're paying attention to this kind of thing. So that I believe is very logical, and I'm with you on that theory. I'm leaning towards he's coming back for those reasons. Now, the other part I think is interesting because a lot of people are going to want to hear Barry Trotz's case, which we've been talking about. We don't play the fire the coach game, and that's the black and white issue, and that's the end of the discussion. If you lose, you fire the coach. It's too simple. At least in my philosophy, I like talking about nuanced decisions. And this is a very nuanced decision because I think if you polled all Predator fans and say, would you be okay if they changed the coach? I think you'd get a lot of people would say, yeah, I'd be up for something new. I don't look at it like that. But I do think Barry Trotz realizes that season ticket renewals and the feeling of the players especially, they're going to want to hear his thought process. And I think you will have a very detailed thought process of
as
on Monday as to how he arrived at this decision.
As I said, I think last week or the week before, how is he going to sell it? Because that's what's going to have to happen on Monday. If the coaching change is not going to happen, Barry Trotz is going to have to put his salesman hat on a little bit and explain, especially after some of the things we heard from the players at the end of the season. How did it feel for Barry Trotz, for Jonathan Marchessault and Steven Stamkos, his two prized free agent acquisitions? How did it feel to hear them say what they did in public? Now, those conversations absolutely happened behind the scenes, but for them to air those things out in public, how did that make him feel? But I am quite curious, Derek, how Trotz is going to explain this decision, if that is indeed the decision, when he speaks on Monday afternoon.
It's, I mean, if anybody can do it, Barry can do it.
That is probably true.
You know, he's bought enough equity. He's piled up enough equity that, you know, I think what he chooses to say, especially after this long, he know that more than likely it will be a message received. But here's what I'm wondering, and either one of y'all can answer this. With the guy that is going into the offseason where his job is unsure, now we assume the way it's looking that he will be able to keep his job. But even that, with a guy, Coach Bruno, who's coming off of a season that they had with the players that they had, they're questioning whether you are the coach or not. I'm not. How does that go if this team starts to lose very early? You know, because you got to
something that they have to be aware of, and I think it's obvious.
Exactly, because you essentially you're almost like a lame duck coach. It's like, yeah, you hear, but man, if this thing isn't at the first sign of, you know, something going wrong, this thing going left, will Barry, you know, pull a plug on it?
I just want to share some numbers that I pulled for the Predators over the past two seasons, Brunette's first season and his second season. And I'm looking at five categories that are often predictors of success: goals for and goals against, expected goals for and goals against, which is shot quality, and shooting percentage. Last season, the Predators were 10th in goals for per game. They were 31st this season, so they fell from 10th to 31st. In expected goals, which is shot quality, they went from 12th per game to 21st per game. Goals against, simple enough, 14th 2 seasons ago, 27th this past season.
Expected.
That was actual goals.
Oh, actual goals against.
Actual goals against, they went from 14th to 27th. Expected goals against, and what I mean by expected is the shot quality that the Predators are allowing. In expected goals against per game, top third of the league. They were excellent. They went from 11th to 26th in expected goals against per game year over year. Shooting percentage, 16th 2 seasons ago, 32nd last year. So these were the numbers from last season. Goals for per game, 31st. Expected goals for per game, 21st. Goals against per game, 27th. Expected goals against per game, 26th. Shooting percentage, dead last.
Well, if you don't see any improvement as the season
there's nowhere
going,
to go but up with those numbers.
Right. But we do have to give him credit for the first year.
Exactly. You give him credit for the
they
first year.
They were a top half team.
That they overachieved in the first year.
They were a top half team in the NHL in all of those categories.
Which was very unexpected around the league, right? That was a very surprising set of numbers in that first year, and that has to count for something. We can't just act like that didn't exist,
but
right? When you're evaluating the coach.
But it can't count for anything because it wasn't the same players. You got to find out, how do you coach this team with these group of guys? That's why, you know, going into the offseason, it seems like you're keeping this coach, and how do you sell this to your fan base, knowing that if it doesn't get better, this may be a quick hook. You know, you got to be able to sell that to the fan base, or you're just saying, hey, listen, we're going to see how this thing go for the rest of, you know, as the season goes and for the rest of the season, and he's our guy for the whole season, and now we're going to move forward with him. that's a message you can give where, you know, if things are not quite going right, at least you don't have to come back to the table and say, well, and change your mind. You just stick with what you had. Hey, I said I was going to stick with him at the beginning of the year, then I'm going to stick with him toward the end.
Famously, Peter Laviolette was fired by the Flyers before he became the Predators coach. He was fired by the Flyers after 3 games.
Yeah.
If the Predators,
that's extreme.
If the Predators have another 0-5 start, it's going to be bad news.
Well, you're going to hear that a lot. And
Yes.
I'll give you an example of 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago? There was a Fire Lindy chant going up in New Jersey after like 3 games. And then he was like the coach of the year by the end of the year. They completely turned it around and had a great year. But they had to withstand that. You have to have confidence that you have the right guy there. I will add this last part because I think this is also a natural thing. When you have a bad year, I just don't think you come back with everything exactly the same. I think there will be some tweaks somewhere in the mix. You know, obviously there's going to be tweaks on the player side. You have contracts and all those things that dictate that, salaries and all that. On the staff, I do wonder if there's going to be some new dynamic to it. And I'll give you an example of Barry Trotz late in his tenure. They brought in Phil Housley, and they demoted or fired, I guess, Peter Horacek. And that was a big move, right? And Phil Housley ended up latching on to the new staff a year later when they made a change. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen or not. I am curious to see if they feel like collectively, Andrew Brunette, Barry Trotz, and you can do this creative. There's no limit to how many assistant coaches you can have. And the contract status, I don't know the contract status with the current staff, but they could come up and say, you know, we thought there was something missing, that if we add this ingredient, this will be another way we can, as you use the term, sell this to the internal group, most importantly, but also externally.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on the Predators coaching situation. We'll bring Jared Stillman in next as we transition to Stillman and Company. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingham, 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mace Vengen and Donick 1025, 1063. The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vengen. Jared Stillman is here with us. Jared, during our show, you sent me a text that said,
I did.
You were right, meaning me. You were right. I can't stand Chig. Because remember, we talked about who your punching bag was going to be this season. Now that Nicholas Petit Frere is no longer a member of the team.
AKA.
We're not doing that. We're not doing that.
The Portland turkey?
Portland turkey.
Yes, the turkey that Willie and I may or may not have hit on our way to Portland.
Oh, we hit
yesterday.
it. But the turkey we think is okay.
Yeah.
Nevertheless.
Well, if you hit it, then it probably wasn't PT because you probably could have just easily gone right around.
Oh, that is just
rim
kicking a guy
shot
when he's down.
Rim shot. But I said, I think Chig Okonkwo is going to be your new Nicholas Petit Frere. What did Chig say today that upset you so?
Well, it's in the 2:00 hour, so I don't want to give away the good stuff ahead of time, but I'll just put it to you like this. Derek, off the top of your head, when you played in the NFL, I'm sure when the season was over, you took vacation and everything else. What's the most amount of countries that you went to in one off season for vacation as an NFL player?
As an active player.
I am curious to know this.
On average, when I was a player, maybe one. On average, a couple. It just depends, especially early on. No, not really. Not any. Because I was here working out. But as I started to get a little older, started getting the face, kids start growing, maybe one country.
Seven qualifying tight ends on PFF. That is concerning. The other thing he said, and again, Derek, I'm going to lean on your experience as a former player here. He said that he was asked how long it'll take Cam Ward, in his opinion, to win over the locker room. And he said Cam Ward already has won over the locker room as a leader. And I'm not sure how that's actually possible.
That it's not possible. I mean, people may like him because of what they've heard or watched him on television, but you don't win over the locker room before you go in the locker room. I mean, they may like you, but then you get in the locker room, they may dislike you. So it's going to take him a minute to win over, truly trust in that locker room. It's not something that happens in a day or before a guy gets there. It's something that builds up. So I don't know where he's getting he's already gained that. How has he gained y'all trust? Y'all haven't played with him.
Did he answer that question?
By the way, can you cut that for me again?
Got you.
You're welcome, Jared.
While we're at it today on the program.
You're welcome, Jared.
No, so yeah, that's Chig said that he's already got it. Chig said he's already won over the locker room. And I'm like, I mean, that sounds good, but it's just it's not feasible. To Derek's point, he hasn't been in the locker room in order for that to happen. So I think Chig is a symptom of what drives me crazy about this team. I think Chig could start on a good team, and if he were like the fifth option in the passing game. So let's say in a couple of years, Dalton Schultz of the Texans retires out of their program, and they've got Tank Dell and Nico Collins and Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel and Chig with CJ Stroud throwing the ball. I think they can be okay with that. But this idea that you're going to introduce this young quarterback in there and he's going to succeed with Chig Okonkwo as his tight end, I mean, I think is absolutely outrageous. And not only that, Chig's been off traveling the world this offseason instead of learning how to catch, because the only thing, according to Pro Football Focus, that Chig was in the top 10 of at tight ends was drops, in which he was fifth. So I am a big fan of getting a young quarterback a tight end, and I don't count Chig as a tight end.
He could be working out where he's gone. You know where he's going, Australia, Japan. He could be working out there. I don't know.
Do you think when you went on your trips when you played, Derek?
I had kids, man.
Ain't
no working out.
I mean, like, what were your workouts like? Were you putting cleats on? When
I
you were
wasn't
going
working out,
out of the
period.
country and you were,
Can you check a jugs machine?
I had 2 little ones, so it wasn't no time for no working out.
Can you check a jugs machine? Can you put that on?
There wasn't time for Derek to work out, but there wasn't time for Derek to get in all the travels and get his off-season training in, but there is for Chick.
But that's
And you
because
wanna know-
I started my workouts a week after the season ended. I started getting my body back going again.
And do you know what the difference between you and Chig is, Derek?
Mhm.
You're good.
Chig is
That's
good,
the
man. Leave
difference.
Chig
No,
alone.
he is not. He is not good. And the people around here that think he's good, that's the problem, is that too many of these Titan fans look at players like him that deep down inside really should be backups.
He gives
and
us
they're like,
something.
I
They drafted
He gives
him
us
tight end.
something, man.
I admit that season, I guess it would have been his
Rookie
after his rookie season,
Second season.
where I thought he was efficient in limited snaps, and he came into training camp. I'm like, I'm going to buy hype into Chig
I did too.
But yeah, not
Chig-
anymore.
He has. It's safe to
Chig's a
say he has
solid
not.
player.
He has not progressed past
No.
okay guy
Solid
who
player.
flashes some ability from time to time, but not consistently. And so they did draft another tight end. I want to ask you a one about the business side of things, Jared, to see if you're getting the same kind of vibe I'm getting with this. Just about everybody I've talked to, whether they're a business person or just an individual Titans fan, but I'm talking about people who live in Nashville and care about the Titans,
Sure.
have not been excited about what they are hearing when they go into, what do they call it, Titans Town or
Titans
whatever?
House.
Titans
Titans
house.
House. I go into, I don't know what Titans House is.
I
but
like Titans Town.
You're
though.
coming into an area where that's where you can get the information. It has not been made public what they're selling, what their price points are for the PSLs, which I don't really understand. But what kind of vibe are you getting there? Because they like to tell everybody that, oh, they're selling a lot. I am not getting that vibe back from people who have actually gone through the process.
So I've been to Titans House, both with the media tour of Titans House, and my dad and I went, and we did buy a pair of season tickets. Now, we bought 2, we have 6. So we've even downsized because the prices are very, very high for the new stadium. Now, they've said that at some point they're going to put kind of the cheaper PSLs on the market. This is where I think the Titans have screwed up. And this is just my opinion. I have no idea. I think what the Titans should have done is, if you're a season ticket holder, when they sold the premium stuff and they're asking for $70,000 and $35,000 a PSL, they should have given people the option then, okay, if you don't want to go for the premium stuff, here's what the non-premium stuff are. And because you're a loyal ticket holder, we'll sell you, 300 level PSLs. We'll sell you these PSLs at these price points. Instead, they've kind of waited. They've told people, well, if you don't want to pay the $35,000, come back and see us later and we'll get into the rest. And so I think that's kind of pissed some people off. But the Titans are adamant that they are just selling the crap out of these PSLs. I mean, doesn't everybody kind of lie about that stuff?
Yes.
So I have a hard time totally believing it, just like I have a hard time totally believing that Jordan Hudson earned her $9 million in real estate, according to the New York Post, that she now has since she started dating Belichick. But again, I mean, I don't have any evidence that says they're lying. I've heard a lot more complaints, Willie, to your point, than I have people saying, hey, this is going to be great.
One more specific complaint, Jared. Do you think a PSL holder in the new stadium should have first dibs on concerts, Final Four, college football playoff, or preseason college football matchups like you would have at Bridgestone Arena?
Yes, but they will not do that for the Final Four of the Super Bowl. So,
Okay, and I think
yeah.
that's a concession. But some of the
But
other
I'm
things,
sitting
when
here
they
saying,
can.
like, if I'm buying it, I want the things I want the most
Yes.
are the Final Four in the Super Bowl.
Yes, but so why not make that part of the package?
Well, I think it is part of the package for concerts.
I think for
I
suite
believe so.
holders it is. I don't think it's for seat holders.
Well, that's not great. Oh, I got one last one, Derek, while I have
Yes,
you.
go ahead.
Okay.
Chris Sanders said yesterday on the program that if he ran a 4.85 40 time, that he would have still made the all-rookie team as a rookie, in spite of the fact that his speed was his number one attribute. Do you believe that?
At tight end, yeah. Possibly.
He looks like a tight end.
Apparently Trevor told me on the show on Tuesday that he ran a faster 40 time coming out in 1985 as a center than Xavier Restrepo did. in
Willie,
his
what
pro
was your
day
40
last
time?
year.
Wow.
4.83.
Okay, add Willie Donning to the mix at 4.83. Jay.
Well, you will be a
In-
tight end.
In 1990, not in the 2000s.
6'3", 4'8", Willie, tight end.
That'll do it for us today. We'll be back at 11. Stillman and Company coming up next.
Be love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, wonderful Thursday. Peace.